If you've ever walked through Bangkok's Chinatown, you've seen it. The hypnotic chaos of Yawarat Road. Street food sizzling over open flames, gold shops glinting under fluorescent lights, temples glowing red and gold. But what most don't see, what they're not supposed to see, is the empire built beneath it all. A world of gray deals, secret syndicates, and silent power. This is the real Chinatown. And this is the mafia that runs it. On the surface, Bangkok's Chinatown is a tourist paradise. The roasted duck, the shark fin soup, the long queues for gold chains sold by the gram. But dig just beneath the surface. Behind the massage parlors, inside certain karaoke lounges, above specific gold shops. And you'll find something else. A parallel society. A network of Chinese-run operations with deep roots in Thailand's gray economy. These are not just small-time crooks. These are members of a powerful mafia syndicate, one that has reshaped Bangkok's criminal underworld over the last decade. The story of modern Chinatown's mafia begins with a name that sent shockwaves through Thailand, Chayanat Kornchayanat. But in Bangkok's underworld, he's better known as Tuhao. A Thai national of Chinese descent, Tuhao wasn't some back-alley thug. He was polished, wealthy, respectable. He was married to a high-ranking police officer, and more importantly, he had connections. In late 2022, police raided multiple nightclubs and Chinese-only entertainment venues in areas just minutes from Chinatown. Behind the velvet ropes, synthetic drugs, underground casinos, sex workers, and security teams paid to keep the Thai public out. These clubs weren't just about nightlife. They were nodes in a much bigger network. One controlling drug distribution, money laundering, and even immigration fraud. At the center of it all, Tuhao. To the average person, Yawarat Road is loud, packed, and harmless. But if you look closely, you'll notice certain clubs with no English menus, certain back alleys with unmarked doors, certain shops where everyone speaks Mandarin and no Thai. These aren't just quirks, they're signs of territory, carved out by syndicates with links to the 14K Triad and the Sun Yeon out of Hong Kong. These groups don't advertise themselves. They don't shoot people in broad daylight. Instead, they operate like shadows. They run gold scams from upstairs offices. They hide drug labs in luxury condos. And they host high-stakes poker games behind seafood restaurants. Many locals know, but only few speak. In 2023, an ordinary bust in Bangkok's Chinatown revealed an extraordinary truth. What appeared to be a simple counterfeit gold operation turned out to be the tip of an enormous criminal iceberg. The syndicate, known as Jiangxi Dragon, had been quietly operating under the radar for years, selling millions of baht worth of fake gold to unsuspecting wealthy Chinese tourists. On the surface, it seemed like a typical tourist trap, but underneath, it was part of a much deeper, far-reaching network. How did they do it? It wasn't complicated, at least not for them. The scam had all the elements of a textbook con. Real Thai frontmen, using fake certificates of authenticity, sold these counterfeit gold items in plain sight. The shops, with their gleaming gold displays and glossy windows, attracted tourists who believed they were purchasing real Thai gold. To the untrained eye, everything seemed legitimate, until the inevitable moment when the gold was appraised back home and the truth came to light. By then, the damage had already been done. The operations were so subtle that most tourists never even suspected a thing. Yet those who had been in Bangkok long enough began to whisper. Locals knew something was off, but most kept quiet. Why? Because behind the Jiangxi Dragon Syndicate, there was something more than just a well-oiled scam. There was protection, real power, the kind of power that didn't wear uniforms but owned them. It was a network that reached into the very fabric of Thailand's systems. It wasn't just a street-level scam, it was a carefully constructed infrastructure, one that made sure the syndicate's operations could run smoothly, unchallenged, and largely unnoticed. The arrest of Tuhao, the head of Jiangxi Dragon, seemed like a breakthrough in the case. The police were hopeful that it would finally unravel the full scope of the operation. But, as with many mafia busts, the story didn't end there. Tuhao's arrest triggered a rapid series of events. Several key figures in the syndicate suddenly vanished. Men with names like Tony, Johnny, and Ming, all Chinese nationals, all deeply invested in Bangkok's nightlife and illicit crypto laundering networks, were gone. They disappeared days before the warrants were issued. Some say the men fled, escaping to distant corners of the world. Others claim they were tipped off long before the authorities closed in. Regardless of the rumors, one thing became clear. These men weren't the masterminds. They were middlemen. The true power lay much deeper, beyond their reach. They were only the visible layer of a much larger and far more dangerous structure. The real bosses, the ones truly in control, were known only as the uncles. They never made headlines. They were the ones pulling the strings from behind the scenes. These powerful figures weren't concerned with the day-to-day operations of the syndicate. They weren't interested in selling counterfeit gold or laundering crypto. Their role was to protect the network, to make sure that the operation stayed intact no matter what. And that's what made them so dangerous. They never appeared in the news. They didn't need to. They were untouchable. The mafia syndicates that ruled Chinatown were not just made up of petty criminals. They were a sophisticated network that had woven itself into the fabric of Thai society. Police corruption? It wasn't an accident. It was by design. Tuhao's wife, for instance, was a police colonel. Her influence and the mafia's money allowed them to operate with near impunity. When Tuhao was arrested, dozens of police officers were investigated or reassigned. But the system remained intact. The mafia didn't rely just on bribes. They controlled entire sections of the police force, which allowed them to protect their interests and avoid inspections. This wasn't a simple crime syndicate. This was an infrastructure, a fully operational, multi-layered system that was embedded into the city's very bones. Today, the operations in Chinatown have evolved. The days of selling counterfeit gold and simple scams are long gone. The mafia in Chinatown no longer deals in the obvious crimes. Instead, they have diversified. They now run call centers in Myanmar, scam networks in Cambodia, and sophisticated pig butchering schemes. These scams operate on an entirely new level. Victims, often from wealthy backgrounds, are tricked into fake romantic relationships online. Over time, they're manipulated into transferring large sums of money. It's digital theft at its finest, and the syndicate runs it like clockwork. But it doesn't stop there. These mafia groups are also deeply entrenched in crypto scams. They figured out how to launder millions of dollars through the world of digital currencies, and they've been using Bangkok, Chinatown specifically, as their launch pad. They recruit online, they bank in crypto, and they operate across borders with ease. They've adapted to the digital age in ways that make them harder to track and even harder to stop. The days of traditional crime, where you could easily point to a street gang or an identifiable figure, are over. What we're dealing with now are syndicates without borders, crime without fingerprints. It's a new kind of mafia, one that operates in the shadows, with no regard for national boundaries or legal jurisdictions. They use the global nature of the internet to recruit, organize, and execute their scams. They don't need to operate in person. They don't need to risk exposure. They just need a laptop, a few untraceable transactions, and a network that stretches across continents. And you wouldn't believe how they do it. They use Thailand as their base of operations. Bangkok, with its bustling economy and global connections, is the perfect place to operate under the radar. The city's infrastructure, its unregulated areas, and the vastness of its international connections allow these syndicates to remain largely unseen. Chinatown, with its labyrinth of narrow alleys and crowded streets, is the perfect cover. On the surface, it's a place for tourists to explore, a cultural hub filled with food, history, and tradition. But in reality, Chinatown is also home to one of the most secretive mafia operations in Southeast Asia. And you've already walked past it. Maybe you've strolled down Yaowarat Road, taken a picture by the golden dragons etched into the temple gates, or stopped by a food cart for some durian. But what you didn't see, what you missed, was the real Chinatown. The Chinatown that exists in silence. The Chinatown that speaks in code, travels in unmarked vans, and operates with a quiet power that nobody dares challenge. Because this is no longer just about gangs and simple crime. This is about syndicates with resources, protection, and reach. They are everywhere, and they are untouchable. And the scariest part? They're getting smarter every day. So the next time you find yourself in Chinatown, when you walk past the lanterns and the busy shops, remember, the Chinatown you see is just one version. The other version, the one that most people don't see, is a place where digital theft, crypto scams, and international syndicates operate in the shadows. And it's a place where danger and power are hidden behind the simplest of facades. Because Chinatown isn't just a tourist destination. It's the headquarters of one of the most secretive and dangerous mafia operations in Southeast Asia. And unless you know where to look, you've already walked right past it.
Thank you for watching Crime by Chapter. If this case left you wanting more, like and subscribe so you never miss a moment.